Welcome to the night section. Now, Joe Budden just proved that business and friendship do not mix whatsoever, like oil and water, and it's crazy and pretty counterintuitive because we're taught that friends are people you can count on and rely on, and it's true. If people really are your friends, you should be able to depend on them, of course, but business for some reason is the thorn that just stabs at the heart. Now, by now, I know you guys have seen the Joe Budden Podcast Debacle going back and forth. It's a lot of he said. I'm not going to go into grave details, but essentially Joe Budden's side of things is that Mal and Rory were just employees, not aware of their contracts, and in his eyes were abusing their privileges and have become entitled, disgruntled, and feel like they were owed more. While on the other hand, Rory and Mal in response claimed that allegedly this was a percentage split situation as partners within the contract. And obviously, if you're dealing with percentages, you need to see the accounting to make sure you're getting your proper percentage. But Joe wasn't transparent with them in that regard, ironically, in which again they claim. But the overarching theme is that business with emotion, business with friendship, business with love interest, business with feelings, or however you want to flip it, does not mix. And let me put it to you guys this way. Business is like sports. You're not going to play a basketball game and be easy on the other team just because your friend happens to play for the other team. No, you will be ruthless because you now take on the identity of your own team. It's nothing personal. You have to do what is best for your team, and that is to win by any means necessary. Just like any business or organization, you do what is best for the business with no emotions involved. It's just a numbers game, and this is where all parties involved got it completely wrong. Now, we don't know any confirmed details of the contractual agreements, but what we do know is that all of them have been acting on pure emotion. If Rory and Mal are right about the accounting situation and Joe was being aggressive or hostile whenever money was brought up, that means Joe was being emotional in that regard. If you have partners in a business, show them the numbers, or even better, have your lawyers and accountants deal with that and you guys just be the talent. This would eliminate any hostility towards one another because that would just become something in the background that the professionals figure out. But if this was the case, I also blame both Rory and Mal for not being forward and upfront and being cutthroat about needing this information. This whole friendship or not caring about money, it's all nice and dandy, but this is serious and not something to play around with, because even if it was the case that they don't quote unquote care, if you truly care about your own brand and business, it may not be the monetary value that you care about, but what you should care about is your self-respect. And it just happens to be money that's the physical manifestation of that respect. And they've trained Joe unconsciously or consciously on how to treat them. Since they don't quote unquote care, I mean, why should Joe care? Because I believe that in Joe's eyes, he feels he was carrying the whole show, and in many ways, he was and is. I mean, it's called the Joe Budden Podcast for a reason, but to diminish the impact Rory and Mal had on the growth of the podcast is juvenile and simply misguided. You'd have to be a complete fool to think that Joe on his own made the podcast what it is today. Kevin Hart actually chimed in on the situation, and this is what he had to say.
To see you publicly shit on the guys that was with you, that's an example of poor leadership. That's an example of why you are where you are. This is why. Here's the answer. Point blank. You want to be by yourself. You want to be King Dingaling.
Oh.
You can't do that. You can't do that. Wealth should be shared, not owned. Facts. So this is a shout out, man, to Rory and Mal. You guys were dope as fuck at that job. Once again, I was a fan of the fucking podcast. It's a sad day to see this shit end when you guys were on your way to what seemed to be higher levels of success. I don't sit up here and promote the negativity. Wish there was a world where you can work it out, but you need a good fucking leader that understands it's not just him.
Oof. I don't know about you guys, but those words cut deep like a knife, and I agree with what Kevin says. I mean, first of all, this whole debacle is messed up and is something that shouldn't even have made it to the public. but Joe made this public and off of emotion went on a tangent to speak ill of the guys that were riding with him. And I know that Joe has spoken a lot on transparency and all that, but I think we are confusing transparency with just downright impulsivity, lack of self-control, an ego trip, and not understanding boundaries, which is the opposite of what you need to be able to actually run a successful business, and like Kevin spoke on, being a leader. And personally for me, I had admired Joe for his stand on independence, cutting ties with Spotify, knowing your worth. I mean, I made my first video on this channel about it. Don't watch it though, it's terrible quality. But the point is, everything, at least for me, just went out the window. He completely mishandled the situation, and now it makes sense why he's burned so many bridges in the entertainment industry. This is definitely not the way to do business, and I know he aspires to be a mogul like Jay-Z, and clearly he's not that yet for a reason. And obviously business is not always done in good faith, but you will never hear Jay-Z open up his mouth and rant on his business dealings or relationships that fell through on a public platform. And that is the exact difference from someone who talks and someone who actually walks the walk. It's always the loudest in a room that has no idea what the hell they're doing. And it's one thing to do this to strangers, but to do this to your quote unquote friends is the lowest of the low. But I know in his most recent podcast, he did take somewhat of accountability, emphasis on the somewhat, and hopefully moving forward, he can become the leader that he aspires to be. I guess you could say this is the worst case scenario of business and friendship intertwining, the ultimate case study of what we can learn on what not to do. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please be sure to subscribe. Please leave a comment and engage about anything you like throughout this video. As well, please leave a like, it really does help, and hit the bell notification if you do want to see more. Night section out.